Chapter 12, Part 2. The talk of the 1905 London season was Maeterlinck's Pelleas and Melisande, in which Sarah Bernhardt played the romantic hero, and Mrs. Patrick Campbell the lovelorn heroine, and the talk was generally good. Maeterlinck was the thing at the time with the European and British intelligentsia. Octave Mirbeau hailed him as the Belgian Shakespeare, and London critics read obscure meanings into his dream-filled symbolist dramas. Mrs. Patrick Campbell had already played Melisande in the English version. For this production, she had to learn the part in French, and she played it remarkably well with hardly a trace of accent. The press was excellent, with the exception of one Dublin critic whose entire review was, Mrs. Campbell played Melisande, Madame Bernhardt Pelleas. They are both old enough to know better. Max Beerbohm, again offended at Bernhardt's appearing as a man, refused to see the show, saying, "Sarah is a woman and Mrs. Campbell is an Englishwoman, and by these facts, such a performance is ruled out of the sphere of art into the sphere of sensationalism." If Maeterlinck were a sensationalist, that would not matter. The play had a good London run, and in the course of an ensuing tour of the British provinces, the two stars struck up a joyous and lasting friendship. Sarah warmed to Stella Campbell's expansive and independent nature. She was endlessly amused by her blunt, often outrageous remarks, and Mrs. Pat saw beneath Sarah's complex exterior an essentially human woman. They felt completely relaxed in each other's company. At times they behaved like giddy schoolgirls. On one occasion, Stella, seeing a tobacco pouch shaped like a fish in a shop window, bought the thing, painted it in lurid colors, and that evening, prior to the scene when the two lovers are leaning over the well and Melisande's wedding ring falls into the supposed water, she placed it on the floor at the bottom of the stage well. The moment came, Sarah immediately spotted the dreadful-looking fish and, without batting an eye, started an improvisation about ces poisons-là that was worthy of Maeterlinck himself. When an actor plays a trick on another, often as not, it's he who breaks up and not his victim. Mrs. Pat, the stately, the classical beauty, was so convulsed by her own prank she was unable for minutes to utter a line. A few nights later, during the cave scene when Pelleas guides Melisande over the rock, Sarah broke a raw egg into Stella's outstretched hand. In addition to the egg, she broke herself up quite hopelessly. Her company was stunned. Madame had never tolerated, much less played, any tricks on stage. They told her co-star with odd solemnity, "She must love you very, very much." She did, and Mrs. Pat loved her. In her memoirs, the latter wrote, "The world knows her genius and her colossal courage, but not everyone knows the thought and affection she has always ready in her heart for her friends." Shortly before this joint venture, Bernhardt had found herself in one of her not infrequent states of needing money. She had appealed to Mrs. Pat, who, although she had only £100 in the bank at that time, sent the entire amount to Sarah. When Pelleas and Melisande was well launched, after one matinee Mrs. Pat was receiving callers, when Madame Sarah walked into her dressing room and in front of the unknown visitors, presented her with a small silver casket which proved to contain her full debt, all in £5 notes. Throughout the ensuing years, the two kept up an affectionate, if intermittent, correspondence. In 1916, when Mrs. Campbell was in the United States, she received a cable from Bordeaux. "Doctor will cut off my leg next Monday. Am very happy. Kisses all my heart. Sarah Bernhardt." In 1905-1906, there was another trip to the United States, announced in advance as the Farewell American Tour of Madame Sarah Bernhardt. There were to be 3 subsequent Farewell American Tours. The announcement was made by her new producers, those enterprising and then young Schubert brothers. Sam, Lee, and Jake. The tour was booked for the South and the Southwest, and not much later the Schuberts issued the further announcement that Madame Bernhardt will play Texas in Tents. This was a bold and desperate move on the part of the Schuberts, for they were bucking the all-powerful theatrical syndicate, which was composed of the three partnerships, Klaw and Erlanger, Frohman and Heyman, Nixon and Zimmerman, a mighty trust that had a stranglehold on most of the theaters and opera houses throughout the country. The syndicate dictated what companies were going to play what towns in which theaters, and specified the duration of each stand. They flatly refused to allow the Bernhardt to appear in any of their theaters or opera houses except under their auspices, and the Schuberts flatly replied, very well. She'd appear in other auditoriums even if they had to be makeshift ones. Consequently, she played Atlanta, Augusta, Savannah, Tampa, and Jacksonville in skating rinks. Then the company set out for Texas. Sometime previously, the Schuberts had approached their star, and not without trepidation. They explained to her that due to the syndicate, there was no available theater in Texas. Even the skating rinks would be closed to them, and they came forward with the astonishing proposition that she play under canvas. To their amazement, she was childishly delighted with the prospect. It would be an adventure, she said, a genuine Yankee adventure, not that the Lone Star State exactly came within Yankee domain. A special round top was constructed for them in Kansas City. It had a 150-foot spread and could accommodate 4,500 spectators. The stage was made in movable sections, the seats folded up. The dressing rooms were like canvas bathhouses, and there were any amount of further circus inconveniences. It was all like a Barnum and Bailey show. At each stand, the tent would be set up on some local fairgrounds. Hastily laid out tracks led from the nearest railroad lines, and special trains bringing audiences from all over the state would draw up alongside the Bernhardt tent. Parked on a nearby siding was the company train, which most of the time served to house actors and personnel. It was tough going for everyone. Living quarters were the essence of discomfort, and theatrical facilities primitive in the extreme. Weather was always playing alarming competition. Sometimes rain pelted down on the taut white top with the noise of 100 snare drums. At other times, a savage wind of a Texas norther would tear loose the tent flaps. Actors had to shout themselves hoarse, and audiences had to strain to hear the words few of them remotely understood. On one occasion, a drunken rancher, upon being refused admission, knocked down a policeman barring his way, fired off his six-shooter, and yelled, "I'm going to see this Bernhardt gal, and her song and dance act better be good." Players and public somehow survived the ordeal. The Schuberts and their star made a mint of money, and Bernhardt's Yankee adventure reaped a spread of publicity that reached even the European press. From Texas, they traveled to the West Coast. The syndicate relaxed their stranglehold, and they played legitimate theaters in San Diego and Los Angeles. San Francisco, still in the smoldering ruins from the Great Fire, was unplayable, but the earthquake had not crossed the bay, and they performed in the Greek open-air theater at Berkeley. Sarah herself volunteered to give a recital for the prisoners of San Quentin. What she performed was a lugubrious little item entitled "A Christmas Night During the Terror," which hardly seems a cheery selection. She was greatly moved by the sight of the row after row of men in black-striped uniforms. What the men in black-striped uniforms thought of the strangely exotic-looking woman who acted for them in an incomprehensible language has not been handed down in the annals of San Quentin.